Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 200 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. A few people said to me, for the 200th podcast, are you going to do something special? And initially I thought, well, no, because, we already do something pretty special each week with the guests that feature on the show, but I just couldn't think of anything particularly special to do. But I thought outside of the box, and we are now doing something special here. I'm out in New Jersey, USA right now to do a podcast with a regular panelist, but this time we're not over the phone. This time we're physically together in a makeshift studio. I'm joined by the former heavyweight world title challenger, Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing, sir?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. It's first time we got a chance to do this in makeshift studio together, so I actually think this is going to be pretty interesting this time.
Should be pretty interesting. Now, obviously, the day itself, usually everything I say on here, it kind of sticks to boxing. I don't really get into what I do in my spare time, but it's been quite an eventful day, obviously, Eddie. You took me to Philadelphia, you took me to the Rocky Steps. I ran up them. I think it took me about 3 minutes to get up them. And obviously the picture by the Rocky statue. You showed me the ghetto. And the coolest thing, well, not the coolest thing, but one of the other eventful things, the IBF Super Featherweight World Champion Tevin Farmer called my cell phone up. I'm already saying American things. My mobile phone up to tell us where to get the best Philly cheesesteaks. So it's been a cool day. It's been a cool day.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I like riding around to the things, seeing places that I used to, frequent, being there a whole lot of time. One place that I did want to kind of, get into maybe is to go to Schuler's gym. It was my home gym for a long period of time. Take a look at, what's going on there, see how it looks, whether it's new, things that are new, guys I haven't seen in a long period of time. It would be good to do that, and I think we're going to do that one of these next couple of days. And at the same time, we're definitely going to look at those cheesesteaks. And namely, a place that was recommended was Max's Cheesesteak. So we're gonna take a run up there and see what it tastes like. You're gonna see what it tastes like. I'm gonna watch and be supportive.
Yeah, for those that may not know, Eddie's now vegan. But yeah, shout out to Max's Cheese. Well, maybe not shout them out. We've got to try them first, actually. So they may be terrible, but I think Tevin knows his stuff when it comes to cheesesteaks. But anyways, let's start with the review part of the show. We're going to start here at the Marina Frappa Resort in Croatia. Friend of the show, Mark Damori, obviously, it was his 41st fight. Now 37-2 with 2 draws. Obviously, the guy that David Haye chose to fight in his comeback fight. He took on Laszlo Penzes, a guy with a record of 10-5. Penzes was actually TKO'd in the very first round. Mark Damori, like I say, win number 37 for him. Moving out now, though, to the Estadio Antonio Marquez in San Juan de los Lagos in Jalisco, Mexico. You like that, Eddie?
Yeah, that's good. Nice.
Topping the bill over here, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., win number 51. Again, a very quick one. A first round knockout against Evert Bravo, a guy that's kind of fought a few fringe level guys, but he loses every time he takes on a guy that we've heard of. So he's now 25-11 with 1 draw. So two fights mentioned there on the review part of the show, both first round knockouts. Talking of another knockout, this one much closer actually to where we are today. We went past it, didn't we, today, Eddie? The Liacouras Center, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Jason Sosa topped the bill. It was obviously supposed to be Carl Frampton until he picked up that freak injury in his hotel lobby. Jason Sosa, his fight was elevated to the main event. He managed to get the TKO in round 7 against Haskell Rhodes, now 27-4 with 1 draw. Rhodes was down twice in the 5th round and once in that 7th and final round. Jason Sosa, a guy who he's actually got a lot of ability, really. He's up there with the top fighters, really. at super featherweight, in my opinion. I mean, he did lose to Lomachenko pretty badly. I think, if I remember correctly, I think they pulled him out late on in that fight. But he's got a lot of moves. I know that you saw him a couple of days before the fight, Eddie, at an amateur show. But no, good to see him back with a bang, and it's good to see him in a main event fight because he's kind of had to tread water since losing to Lomachenko. I think he had one fight against somebody. It could have even been Yuriorkis Gamboa, if my memory serves me correctly. And I think he was quite unlucky to not get the win. I think Gamboa got the win on the night, if that is what happened. It was quite controversial.
Yeah, it's no shame, honestly, in losing to, I want to say Gamboa, but Lomachenko. He's a really, really talented guy, one of the top guys in boxing today, probably one of the pound for pound best, if not the pound for pound best. So, it's a really, really tough situation when you're fighting him, and it's tough to look good, and especially when you're the guy normally that has all the moves and all of the good footwork and all of the nice, combinations and things like that. Because then, if you got to be second, then it really, really, really is tough to get a foothold in the fight. So you got to almost change and completely switch gears and go into his chest and try to make him feel uncomfortable. But we all know how hard that can be. So and then as far as with Gamboa, like you say, it's controversy with it. It's a surprise to see, from what I heard, he did really well. I actually seen parts of it. He did really well, like he won the fight, and then to get the controversial fight to go the other way, it's just unfortunate. But he's back now. He had a good win, and he seems like a really good guy and a good ambassador for the sport. So, look out for him.
Absolutely. And we should mention on the undercard, this was a real shock here. I don't want to say the guy's name wrong, but I'd say that is probably pronounced Ramirez. I could be butchering it, but it is what it is. I should know how to pronounce his name. I think he was a double Olympic gold medalist. He took on Adan Gonzalez, who was only 4-2 with 2 draws going in. It ended up being a split decision after 4 rounds in favor of Gonzalez. He actually had Ramirez, the Olympic champion, down in the very first round, and it cost him. Just another lesson there. That really, the transition from amateur to pro, it's not one that you can take for granted at all.
Yes, 100% correct. Even I can attest. The one thing about me as an amateur is that I fought more of a pro style. So turning pro for me really wasn't a big adjustment, except for realizing that you're not wearing headgear anymore and the gloves are smaller. So that's the only difference. But as far as the style goes and the pace, it was pretty comfortable for me. But you look at guys who have been career amateurs and throw a lot of punches and fight in that amateur style. Sometimes it could be a tough transition. Other guys take the skill of it and turn it into a professional thing, which like guys like Lomachenko and even Shakur Stevenson, who actually are able to thrive. And of course there's loads of other guys, but those guys seem to thrive in the professional game as well as in the amateurs. So you just got to be able to switch gears a little bit and use what you've learned in the amateurs to help you in the pros.
Yeah, and talking of actually Shakur Stevenson, that was a guy that Ramirez was able to beat in the amateurs, along with Andrew Selby, Michael Conlon. There was a few others as well. So just goes to show that transition, you really cannot take it for granted, like I say. But yeah, that's it for that one. Moving out now to the Verizon. How do you say it?
Verizon?
Verizon, right? That's better because it's a phone network, right?
Yeah, right, okay. Verizon.
The Verizon Theater in Texas, USA. Let's start with the undercard. Firstly, friend of the show, Hector Tanahara. He remains undefeated, 18-0 now. A complete shutout, 10 rounds to 0 against Ezequiel Aviles, who's now 16-4 with 3 draws. So, like I say, a complete clean sweep there for Tanahara. Also on that bill, the trilogy, the final fight of the 3, Joshua Franco. Another draw with Oscar Negrete. Obviously, the first fight that they had, it was a draw. And then the second fight, I think it was a close decision to Franco. And now the first fight, another split draw. It was for the WBA International and the NABF bantamweight titles. 2 belts on the line. And I don't really think we should see a fourth, because it seems like both guys, although they're still prospects, they're kind of spending a little bit too much time around each other. But very, very close fights, all 3 of them, and credit to both guys really for wanting to keep getting it on. But I feel sorry really for Negrete. He perhaps deserved one Well, at least one of them, I'd say, but it is what it is. They were all very, very close. No complaints really with that. But the main event, Virgil Ortiz Jr., I did say on last week's show, arguably one of the best prospects in world boxing. He went in with 100% KO ratio, and he came out with that ratio intact. Now 14-0, 14 knockouts, a TKO in the 6th round against Antonio Orozco, a guy that had only had one loss, and it was, of course, to Jose Ramirez. In that fight against Ramirez, Orozco lost on points. This time he actually got, like I say, TKO'd in the 6th round. He was down 3 times in that round. We saw a little clip of it, Eddie, obviously. Ortiz Jr. just, he knows how to finish. And after he dropped him the first time, he just went hunting for him, really. And he was able to find him with some nice clean shots after that. And a big statement, because he's done something there that a reigning undefeated world champion couldn't do.
Right. I mean, you look at that, and immediately looking at the video, you just see the ferocity when it comes to finishing. And that's important, you know what I mean? A prospect like him hasn't been in the game very long. You have to immediately make your presence felt and let these guys know that you're not going to be sitting around letting ducks or letting good fighters stick around. If you can get him out of there, you got to be able to get him out of there. And that's something, too, as you go to a higher level. Because, the knockouts and stuff like that aren't going to come as frequent at a higher level. So if you get an opportunity to when you have a guy hurt, to get them out of there, you have to be able to really just be ferocious and take care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. That is everything really for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 1, it is now time to welcome, and it's a brilliant interview this, so do not skip through it. It's a fantastic interview. We're going to welcome here our very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former WBA Lightweight Champion of the World. It is, of course, Mr. Ray Mancini. Ray, welcome to the show, sir.
Well, Joe, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that you're here also. So, Ray, first things first, a typical opening question, really. How did you first get into boxing? Why did you, first get into boxing as a young kid?
Most people know that I'm fought because my father was a fighter in the 1930s and 1940s. He was the #1 contender in the world, signed to fight for the world title in January of 1942 and signed to fight for the title in February of 1942, got drafted in January of 1942, so consequently never got the opportunity to fight for the title. And I always heard about how he should have been, could have been, would have been world champion if it wasn't for the war. So when I was a little boy, people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I used to say I want to be a fighter or a world champion for my father. And a lot of these people thought, oh, that's cute. Little boy wants to be a fighter for his father. But that's all I ever wanted to be. That's all I knew. So, but it's funny because my father, on the other hand, people think you're a fighter because your father. Yes and no. Yes, because I wanted to be him. But no, he's the one who tried to talk me out of it the worst way. He knew what type of pain life it is, that it's a painful life, a lonely life. So he tried to talk me out of it because I had other opportunities. I had academic as well as athletic scholarships to go to college, had a professional baseball offer, had other opportunities, things I could have done. And he said, Raymond, I had a fight. It was depression. You have so many other things you can do. I said, no, Dad, I want to win the title. I want to win the world title for you. So that was it. That's the reason I got into it.
And obviously you mentioned your father there, obviously a top contender during the 1940s especially. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, did he like to stay active. He boxed 12 times in 1939, 13 times in 1940, and another 13 times in 1941. So in a 3-year period, 38 fights. That really is a thing of the past. It obviously doesn't happen nowadays. It's brilliant.
No, it don't, and I'm glad you reiterate. I didn't even know the exact how many times he fought 1 year, and that's pretty impressive because, like you said, these guys nowadays they fight once, twice a year because of the money. But look, if it was back then, my father he fought because he said, like he said, it was depression. Raymond, I had to eat. You know, you have a broken hand, or a swollen hand, or a bruised hand. You still had to fight. Same thing with the eyes. So no matter what, these guys had to fight to eat. It was literally, for them to eat, they had to fight. So it's obviously much different nowadays. But I like to think if it was nowadays and he fought in the same time period, I think he'd be $1 million fighter because of his style. And the people would have loved him. And he wouldn't have had to fight so often, obviously. And if I was fighting back then, I'd probably been fighting as often as he was. In 1980, my first 4 years as a pro, I fought 12 times. Average of once a month, but you do it because you want to stay active and you're healthy and you're strong and you're winning and you want to keep moving.
Yeah, for sure. And, you made that jump from amateur to pro in October of 1979. You made your debut against Phil Bowen. The fight didn't even last one round. It was over before you knew it. What do you remember from that fight, Ray? Did you have any pre-fight nerves making your pro debut?
Well, absolutely. I was nervous before every fight. People always say, were you nervous before a fight? I said, absolutely. But that's a good thing. I was nervous not of the fighter, not of the fight. I was nervous of the unknown. Meaning if I get cut, how am I going to react? I get dropped, how am I going to react? And things like that. So a lot of questions you have, but every fighter should have those questions. So you go over it in your mind. So once you replay it in your mind, if it should happen, you've already been there, so to speak. And that's what they call positive mental visualization. Sports psychologists say, go through the fight in your mind, every scenario, and then you'll know. Then you'll know, if it happens, you've already been there in your mind. So that's kind of what I've done throughout my life. Without knowing it was the right thing, I didn't learn about positive mental visualization until later in my career, but that's what it was. So, of course, you visualize everything, and you're nervous before the fight, but you want to be nervous because it keeps you on edge. It keeps you sharp. If you're not nervous, then that's when you can get lulled to sleep, and that's when you get lackadaisical, and that's when you get caught.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, you were very active. Only 6 months after turning pro, you were already 8-0 with 7 knockouts. You then boxed for your first title, the Ohio State title against Bobby Sparks. Right. And much like your pro debut, you knocked your man out in a round. What was it like to pick up a first piece of hardware as a pro?
Well, it was beautiful. It was great to see that. Now, they didn't have a belt for Ohio State. They had a trophy, which was just as good. It's nice to have the title. Look, titles are nice, and they mean things as you're on the climb because it gives you, it just gives you a credibility for what you're trying to accomplish. But, ultimately, the ultimate goal is the world title. So when I won the state of Ohio lightweight championship, then I won the North American title, but it still wasn't the lightweight title, And these are the things that mean everything. These are the fights that those are the belts that you want, to be world champion is significant. So for me, those are things, but they're stepping stones along the way. You have to have stepping stones. And it just let me know that my career was headed in the right direction, that I was doing things the right way. But, titles and everything, the fights are good. Like I said, I want to be an active fighter. Like I said, they give you confidence as you're climbing the ladder, but by no means are they, a state title or a North American title is nothing like till you get that world title.
And we will talk about that shortly. 10 wins later after this, Ray, 7 by knockout in those 10 wins. By this time, you'd just beaten Jorge Morales for the NABF title. You then box Jose Luis Ramirez. Now, he had a beautiful looking record, 71-3 going into that fight. And of course, the year previous, he'd lost that split decision to the great Alexis Arguello, a fight where Ramirez actually had Arguello down. Now, you, however, went on to dominate Ramirez pretty much every round. It was almost a shutout. What do you remember from that fight against Ramirez, who of course went on to be a 2-time WBC world champion himself?
Yeah, what I remember most about it is that Ramirez was very confident in the fight. We were fighting. They offered to fight in the next town over for me, Warren, Ohio. And yeah, I said, yeah, sure, I'll come. In other words, he was so confident that they didn't care where they fought me. And I was such a big underdog that they didn't even have the betting line in Las Vegas because he was just so experienced. At that time, he had over 70 fights. Over 60 fights. Over 60 fights. And
70,
of course, I was just my...
over 70.
What, at that time? Okay. And I only had 18. But I had seen the fight with Arguello, and I actually thought he beat Arguello. I actually thought he won the fight. And of course, if the fight wasn't in Miami Beach, he would have lost. Alexis would have lost. Anywhere else, he loses. So everyone thought this was the opportunity to have to rematch. But he fought me, and they took what they thought was a tune-up fight against me. because at that time, CBS was holding in WBC a lightweight tournament. So the top 8 guys fought each other. And that's why originally I fought Jorge Morales. And then when I beat him, I fought, the next fight was against Ramirez. And then the next fight was to get a title. And so nobody thought I was going to get past Ramirez, obviously. And but when I beat him and I shut him out in all 12 rounds, because it was a smart fight, I fought smart. I was aggressive, but I boxed, and not a lot of people had seen me box before. And so I totally befuddled him and had him, I outworked him, I punched him, and I outboxed him and I outthought him. So it was a new things to people, to my repertoire that they hadn't seen before.
Yeah, sensational win at the time, that one. And then, only 6 weeks later, you were in the ring against the aforementioned Alexis Arguello for his WBC Lightweight World title. Now, the fight, of course, was a real thriller while it lasted, but ultimately, it wasn't meant to be your night. You were stopped in the 14th round. You suffered your first career loss. Now, a first loss, obviously, Ray, can either make you or break you as a fighter. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of guys fold. Everyone thinks that having a 0 at the end of your record, having 0 on their loss, it means something. It don't mean anything. It just means a lot of guys have 0s for a long time. It means you're not fighting a whole lot of guys. You're not fighting the top guys. So, I was in my 20th fight, and I took on a road team and won an all-time great. And I know how great Alexis was. I was a fan of his growing up. I saw when he beat Ruben Olivares for the featherweight title. I saw when he beat Escalera for the junior lightweight title. I saw when he moved up to lightweight. I just thought I was a little too strong for him and a little too young. But Alexis, like any great fighter, uses experience. I hadn't had the experience, and he used this experience to beat me. And but after that fight, I knew I'd be a world champion.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear you say that, because like I say, as I just said, it can either make you or break you. It certainly seemed to make you, and you did bounce back with 2 knockout wins over Manuel Adebayo and Julio Valdez before making a second attempt at a world title, this time obviously for the WBA world title against the champion Arturo Frias. However, while you were training for the fight, there was obviously an incident where I believe 3 gunmen showed up at your hotel looking for you. To this day, their identities have never been discovered. That must have been pretty scary.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people don't know that. I'm surprised you know that. So that's pretty. You did your diligence. You checked out. That's funny. It was weird. I was in the gym, and U.S. Marshals came to the gym. And they told my trainer all of a sudden during the training, trainer Murphy Griffith stopped me. He said, "Ray, man, you got to talk to these guys." And they come in and they identified themselves as U.S. Marshals, and they explained to me that they had received a call from the hotel we had been staying at, that one of the chambermaids said that men were looking for me at the hotel, and they had guns. And they asked her, "What do you think they want on Mancini?" She was, "I don't know. I think they wanted to kill him." And they said if they found a Mancini, she was, "I think he'd be dead." And it was just it was the craziest thing. And the funny thing is how focused that was, is that they said, "Well, you can't. We got to get you back. You have to be under a different room, under a different name." And the next morning, I said, I said, I got to go do road work tomorrow. And they said, no. I said, no, I'm doing road work. You could follow me, you could be with me, but I'm doing road work. I have a fight in 3 weeks. It was 2.5 weeks. And I said, I got a fight in 2.5 weeks, and I'm not going to let this deter me. And so next morning, they got up or whatever, and they did drove in a car bus. But that was it. And then we called Bob Arum and made the arrangements to fly to Las Vegas right away. So I was there 2.5 weeks before I should have been. And one of the stories that a lot of people don't know is we always had 4 sparring partners. So we left 2 of them in Tucson, and we figured we'd pick up 2 when we got to Las Vegas. When we got there, and especially the last 10 days, Murphy Griffith, my trainer, had been close friends with Eddie Futch. They knew each other very well. And he asked Eddie Futch, he said, "Do you have anybody my kid can work with?" he says, well, I don't have any lightweights, but I got a junior lightweight right over here, and this kid will give you all the work you want. And the first 10 days, or the first 4 or 5 days, he slapped the crap out of me. He kicked the crap out of me. And then I was there because he was a lot faster than me until I caught up. Because, that's when you're getting in shape, And I was catching. Then all of a sudden I had 5, 6, about a week later, I caught up to him. And I started catching him and putting it to him. And that young man was named Freddie Roach.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, I always love Freddie for what he did for me. Not because he had to, because he wasn't. And we offered him pay, and he wouldn't take the pay. He said, no, I'm getting ready for a fight too. And I told him, pay him, I don't care. And he said, no, and he wouldn't take the money. And I always love Freddie because I've talked about it many times. I told that story, and he always laughs. Yeah, I had a good week. But Freddie could fight. People don't realize how good a fighter he was. It's just that, unfortunately, he couldn't punch. He was not a big puncher. If Freddie could punch, he'd been world champion several times over.
Oh, that's an incredible.
Because he had too much. He had too much heart and too much guts for anybody, but he just couldn't punch. So that's why he was always in a war, because he's going to stand up with anybody, but he just couldn't punch to keep guys off of him. But that's a true story. We got there. He sparred with me, and believe me, he got me ready for that fight as much, if not more, than anybody.
That is brilliant, man. That's an incredible story, man. That's fantastic to hear that. But back onto the fight itself, Arturo Frias. I mean, I tell you what, Ray, a lot of people talk about the first round between Hagler and Hearns. I don't know why people don't mention the first round of Frias Mancini, because it's definitely one of the best rounds I've ever seen.
Well, no, I mean, yes. I mean, that was round of the year, and a lot of people said the best one-round fight ever. And I'm flattered and I'm honored by that. The first Hagler Hearns was a great round too, but they still went on another 2 rounds. So it's the best 3-round fight, but it wasn't the best 1-round fight. We were the best round fight, and I think our round was a better round than theirs, the first round. So, but it was great. They did great, but I'm very honored. Look, Art caught me early on. He came out, and he jumped on me, and he caught me, and then when you're hurt, you do one of 2 things: you punch back, cover up, or fire back. And I chose to fire back.
Do you know what? Just not going off of the subject, but I'll tell you another great 1-round fight. I don't know if you ever did see this. Did you ever get to see Kendall Holt and Ricardo Torres?
No.
Boy, oh boy.
But I've heard about that.
Yeah, that was incredible.
I've never got to see it.
That was incredible. I think it was the rematch between them both. But just in a nutshell, Kendall Holt was down twice, and he got up off the deck. He was really shaky, and he actually managed to knock Torres out. And all this happened in 61 seconds. It didn't even go any further than that. There's 3 knockdowns in 61 seconds. It was incredible. But anyway, back onto yourself, Ray. Just if you can, just try to put it into words for me. I mean, you were able to win a title there in a round. What does that feel like? How do you describe the moment you became world champion? Where does it rank amongst the best nights of your life?
It was, other than to me, each one of my children born, it was the best day of my life.
Yes.
And it was euphoric. It was a euphoric feeling.
It's the what one? The fourth?
Well, let me clarify that. Each one of my children born and being married to my wife.
Okay.
But I'd be like, you got to be kidding me. You ain't mentioning our wedding. That's different. It's a different. People understand. They look at you. It's a different type of feeling when you have a child, and then when you win a title that you've won long for. That's a whole different feeling. That's why it's the greatest day. It's the greatest in my life. But marrying my bride is right there.
Yeah, that's a cool story. Obviously, how you both met so many years later. I know about that as well. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, you know that story. Yeah. He said, "Oh, that's very cool." Years later. Yeah.
No, but obviously your first defense of the title, Ray, against Ernesto España. España's probably one of the biggest lightweights I've ever seen, actually. And you were 5'4.5". You had no trouble really finding him at all. I should mention España also had 2 fights with Arturo Frias. They both won 1 each. So this win was just further proof, really, that you were a level above these guys.
Yeah, I hope so. I like to think so, but of course, that's being presumptuous. Yeah, I beat them. Art fought. They split 1-1, and then Espana got the title fight, the rematch against me, I'm sorry, not rematch. I'm sorry. He had my first title defense. No, it's funny how these guys somehow become the number one contender. They just miraculously end up there. One time they're there, and the next one time they're not, and next time they're there. But by the graces of the organizations, the voting organizations, right? but yeah, you know, and he was a tall 5'11", difficult, strong puncher, good puncher. I've seen him in other fights. I saw when he won the title. But you know, we got the right style for him, and we kept aggressive. We trained very, very hard for that type of fight. It would be a very aggressive fight to stay on top of him, don't let him breathe. Pressure, that, and keep banging that body. It's just a sustained body attack. And then we felt once we got to tap that body, then we'd be able to break him down, and then I could tap that chin.
Absolutely, and you really did. And obviously, your next fight, Ray, was obviously a very tragic one, to say the least. You defended successfully your WBA World title against South Korea's Duk-koo Kim. You scored the knockout in round 14. The fight was action-packed while it lasted. What do you actually remember from the fight itself, Ray?
Well, it was a very brutal fight. Very strong, determined challenger. And especially when people are fighting, you know, it's like the guys I fought against were all, other than Bobby Chacon, were all from outside the United States. And when you're fighting somebody from another country, they're always much tougher to fight because you're fighting somebody who's carrying the weight of their country with them, the hopes and dreams of their country. So it's always going to be a much more difficult fight. So I remember that it was a very difficult, strong he was, how determined he was, how aggressive he was. And even when I hit him with shots to back him up, he kept coming forward. And I had a very difficult time discouraging him. Other guys, you know, when they felt my power, they would, you know, back off, be a little discouraged, but he wasn't. It was just a brutal fight. And if what happened didn't happen, it would be one of the fights that you see on replays on ESPN, classic fights all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, the events that followed the fight unfortunately kind of overshadowed what happened in the ring. You kind of just said that there as well. I can only imagine, Ray, how sensitive this whole thing is for you. So like I said, I don't want to push you too hard with anything here, but I just want to let the people know that that may not know. Obviously, your opponent, Duk-koo Kim, collapsed after the fight. He fell into a coma. 4 days later, he would die in hospital. His mother flew from South Korea to the US to be at his bedside. His mother then 3 months later decided to take her own life, and then perhaps unrelated, but 5 months after that, the referee of the contest, Richard Green, also took his own life. As I say, Ray, I can only imagine how difficult of a position these events left you in. What can you tell us about it from your point of view? It's obviously been highly documented. You were in a real bad place. Yeah, well, of course I was in a bad place. It was heartbreaking, you know, because it's never in anybody's intention. You go in there because for the sport, it's a sporting event, and we understand that. And the thing I guess bothered me the most was how come him and not me? And who's to say it wouldn't be me next time? Because my style of fighting was not going to change. So I guess that's what stayed with me most, and that's what bothered me the most. And I just, you know, said my prayers about it. I didn't know if I wanted to retire or if I wanted to move forward. I was in a very bad place in my life at the time for a small period of time. But the one thing I've learned, because of my faith, my faith is what carried me through, my faith in Christ. And I felt that for me, I had to make a decision quickly. Quickly in the sense that some people hold on, they wait, and they never move on with their lives. And when they move on, it's very begrudgingly. For me, I couldn't do that. And so I had to move on quickly. Or for me, the best thing is to move on quickly. Make peace with it. I said my prayers, made peace with it, and then I moved on. And then I decided a couple of months later I was going to fight again. But it was a very difficult thing to go through, especially with his mother and then what happened to Richard. But, you know, I can't control things outside myself. So these are things, obviously, I didn't have any control over. And it's sad, unfortunate. You have to come to grips with it and move forward. Look, there's only three things. There's only
three things in life. With three ways to go, I should say, in life. You move forward, you move backwards, or you stand still. 2 to 3 ain't good. So, you could choose there's one of three choices. Only one is the right choice. And that's what I chose to do.
No, I like the way you put that. I like that about the three choices. Obviously, at the time, Ray, you flew over to South Korea. You attended the funeral. Looking back now, because I know that... No. That's been said, and that's not true. Okay.
I went to South Korea. I've been to South, but years later. I didn't go over for the funeral. That's been written, and I don't know where they got that, because I wanted to. I wanted to attend the funeral, but I was told we have a very good family friend who's from Korea, and he actually had diplomatic relations with the government, the Korean government, and he extended my condolences to the family, to the government, to the country, and he said, but it would not be a good time for me to go over, not the right time. Too many, that was too fresh. There was a lot of bad feelings at that moment.
Oh, that's
at a later time. And I wound up going over later years. I forgot, I think it was like 2003, 2004, 2005, something like that is when I went over. But I was long after that. And the people were very loving towards me, and they said to me, we understand what happened, and we feel you're one of us now because we feel his spirit lives through you. Wow. So I was very flattered and very honored. But no, I didn't go. A lot of people have said that. I've heard that many times. I wanted to, but that I was advised not to. So obviously I didn't.
Okay, it's good to clear that up. I didn't want to carry on with a question. Thanks for cutting me off there.
That's okay. That's okay.
Obviously, after that fight, Bob Arum famously said that you were never the same fighter after that. Would you agree with that statement, Ray?
No, I wasn't. And I'll tell you, Bob said that. I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the fact that they were considerate of my feelings. But no, look, I went out and I fought right after, and I knocked out Jose Luis. I fought a non-title fight. I was not impressive in that non-title fight against George Feeney, but I beat him decisively. And then I went out and knocked Orlando Romero out, and then I knocked out Bobby Chacon. I mean, I fought as hard as I did. The difference was, here's the difference. Before that, I fought for righteous reasons, to be the world champion for my father, and once I wanted to tell the best champion I could be for my city of Youngstown, for my family, to be the best representative and the best champion I could be. After that fight, there was nothing good about it. For me, I lost all love for the sport. But it was an opportunity to gain my financial security. It was still, I had devoted so much of my life, and I was now the opportunity to make that pay off for me. That's why I continued to fight hard, because it became business for me then. It became business.
Yeah, you mentioned there the George Feeney fight, a win against our man from Britain. Obviously, that one took place over in Italy, points win over 10. And then you mentioned also your third defense of the title against the undefeated Orlando Romero. You finally got to box at MSG, a venue that you dreamt of boxing at, and you managed to stop him in the 9th round. And then your fourth and final successful world title defense against an excellent fighter, really, in Bobby Chacon, obviously a former featherweight and super featherweight world champion. You were able to stop him in 3 rounds. Real impressive win there. What do you remember from that fight, Ray, in particular?
Well, Bobby, I love Bobby. I really love Bobby. I was a fan of Bobby. And, look, Bobby had just come up back-to-back fights of the year. One against Boza Edwards, your guy, Boza, who's a great fighter, and one against Bazooka Lemon. And I just felt I was too big and too strong for Bobby. I felt I was too big and too strong. But as a matter of fact, he was willing to take on the fight. And he won, and Bobby was a dangerous fighter. You could never, I just felt too big and too strong. And I just felt, at that time, I was 23, and Bobby was 32, I believe. And I said, I have to make him fight at a 23-year-old pace. Do not let him fight at a 32-year-old pace. So I had to keep the pressure on him. Because Bobby is very slick, very, very smart. And so, one thing pressure does, pressure negates speed. Pressure negates quickness. Pressure negates a lot of things. When a guy's on top and you got to fight him, you ain't got a chance to do a whole lot. So that's why that fight was so important for me.
And of course, after that was the first fight with Livingston Bramble. You were ahead in the fight on 2 scorecards, but were stopped in the 14th round. You lost the world title. And if you think about it, Ray, that 14th round, or just round 14 in general, seemed to be a bit of a curse, actually, when you think about it. Obviously, the Aguero fight, the Kim fight, it was a bad round 14.
Yeah. Well, I don't get caught up in that. I really don't. I never thought of that. I mean, the Aguero fight was, this was a fight that I just wasn't 100% healthy for, and that's no excuse. It was the fact. It was medical proof. But I went in there anyway. I felt I had enough to beat him no matter what. Because people say, if you're not healthy, don't go in there. And they're absolutely right. But I had trained so hard, and I felt no matter what, I'd still have enough to beat him. But I was, again, my wife's telling me, that's your ego. Yeah, that's ego. Ego makes you believe you can do the unbelievable, the unthinkable. And so I believed I could do it. But it was just too much. If it's modern, if it's conspiracy times where there's only 12 rounds, I win the title. I hold on to my title. But that's why the true champ distance is 15. And he earned it, and he deserved it. And that's why I wanted the rematch right back, because I knew I wasn't 100% healthy. And I felt that I went 14 rounds with him, and he couldn't knock me out. I felt if I was right, I would have beat him. And that's why I wanted to do the match right away. And the rematch happened 8 months later. I believe he had a fight in between, but you didn't. You were right back at it, like I say, 8 months later. This time it went the distance. You lost in the narrowest of fashions, just 1 point across all 3 scorecards. Did you agree with the decision that night or not, Ray? No, I felt, it was a very difficult fight. I was bleeding from the second round off from cuts. But I felt, if I watched the fight, and I felt I punched him. And even, there's writers, when is when the writers write about it. And there was one guy, a writer from New York, Dick Wolf. Dick Wolf didn't give me credit for anything. Very hard to determine old, writer, curmudgeon of a writer. He didn't give me credit for anything. But that fight, he said, I didn't know that blood scored points. I thought it was punches. And if that's the case, Ray Mancini won that fight clearly. Because I outpunched Bramble. And I thought, I was pretty mad. And it was a very difficult fight. And he was a terrific fighter and strong guy. But I outpunched him. And I just thought I won that fight. I felt clearly I'd come away with victorious. But for whatever reason, I didn't get the decision. But in my mind, I was okay in the sense that I retired. I was going to retire after a fight no matter what. And I retired on top the way I wanted to. I went out on my terms. And in boxing, Ray, there are obviously, there's boogeymen out there and guys that your style just doesn't work against. Would you say that Bramble was your boogeyman, or did, the outsider ring issues and stuff like that play a big part in your back-to-back losses to him? No, styles make fights, and he's a difficult style for me, just as I'm a difficult style for him. Yeah. And so if we had 10 fights, 10 out of 10 times we're going to play it at the same. He ain't going to go back. I'm going to have to push him back. He's going to try to push me back. The first time, if I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't held this, and he was able to do that the second half of the fight. The second fight, he couldn't do that. I moved when I wanted to move, and I pushed him back. So I think, styles make fights. It's just certain guys that have a problem for certain guys. And he would have been that type of fight for me. But like I said, 10 out of 10 times we'd have the same type of fight. It'd always be a war. I'd get him half the time, or maybe he'd get me half the time. But I like to think I would have got him more than half the time. You mentioned, Ray, you retired after that. You were only, was it 23 or 24 at the time? I was 24 when I was 23 when that fight happened. I was 24 when I announced my retirement. Okay. And like I say, you did, however, make a return to the ring 4 years later. You returned against the undefeated Hector Macho Camacho. You lost a split decision over 12 rounds for the WBO World title. That really could have been one of the best comebacks we've ever seen. Well, I knew Camacho was a personal thing. We were supposed to fight when the fight with Bramble happened. It was supposed to be Camacho. And Bramble was going to take step-aside money, which was not uncommon in that time. And then he'd fight the winner. But for whatever reason, WBA came on at the last minute. I think it was because they got pressure from Bamble's people, which originally agreed to, and they changed that if he would take step aside money, but they pressured him to have him make the fight happen. So once it happened, that was it. But Camacho was personal. I always wanted to fight Camacho. That was a personal thing. So when the opportunity came up to fight him, I was still in shape. I was still kept myself together. It's been 4 years. I was not sharp. I hadn't been in the ring. And it's not the smartest thing for a guy like my style, a guy who's a boxer, a banger. A Ray Leonard could do it. A Camacho could do it because they're boxers. They could get out, move around for 3 or 4 rounds. They get acclimated to the ring. Where in my style, I have to come forward right from the jump. But I knew I wasn't going to get hurt against Camacho. I knew Camacho was not a puncher. I knew I wasn't going to get hurt. So I did it. So that's why I felt, I did everything I wanted to do. And it was not a great fight. It was a good fight, but it was not a great fight because, like I said, I was not sharp or anything. And all he did was run. But I certainly beat him, and he knows it. Even after the fight, I lost, but they gave it to me, so I won.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, kind of robbed of one of the greatest comebacks ever to have 4 years out like that. And then you retired for another 3 years before returning against Greg Horgan. But on that occasion, of course, you were stopped in the 7th round, your final fight ever. Any words on that, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, look, that was ego. The first fight with Camacho was personal, like I said. 3 years, that was ego. I was doing an off-Broadway show in New York when they offered me to fight Greg Horgan. Now, you have to understand, I was happy with my life, but boxing is not acting is not a physical thing. It's a mental, emotional thing. I needed to be challenged physically. I wanted to see if I could still come back and compete like a world-class athlete. So I said, yeah, I want to do it. But that was ego. And you know what ego does? Ego gets you your ass whipped. That's what ego does. Figuratively and literally, it gets you your ass whipped. So what happened was supposed to happen, I guess, because I went in there. I had a training camp. Training camp was great, but training camp's a dress rehearsal. I just had my second child, my first son, and I left him when he was only a couple of months old. I felt guilty. I felt bad. And the song from Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, that would come on every day around the same time, 3 o'clock, and I felt guilty. So, before my attitude was, tonight, you're getting carried out or I'm getting carried out. My attitude this, I was like, oh, God, don't let me get hurt. My babies need me. Don't let me get hurt. So it was different. But what happened should have happened because it left no more doubt. There was no more what ifs. I got one more left. No, that's it. I can't fight no more. Not that physically I couldn't fight. Mentally I couldn't do it. And mental works over the physical.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
especially in boxing.
It resolved. Right, and it resolved it for me.
And you finally retired for good this time with a record of 29-5, 23 wins by knockout.
But Joe, let me clarify. People always ask me my record. I say 30-4 because the fight against Camacho, I will never say I lost the fight. No, record-wise 29-5. I said no, I didn't beat Camacho. I did not lose to Camacho. I beat Camacho. So if you ask me, it's 30-4.
That's it, 30-4.
Right,
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah,
I want to ask you, Ray, who was the best fighter that you ever boxed?
Lex Arguello, without a doubt. Lex Arguello was one of the greatest fighters of all time. Top 10 Latinos and top 20, 30, 25 fighters of all time.
And did you have any regrets in your boxing career? Was there perhaps anyone that you wish you could have fought, but the fight didn't happen?
Yes. Camacho early in my when we were supposed to in 1983 and or 84 I should say 1984 and Aaron Pryor. Now I got to be good friends with Aaron later on, but that was a fight everyone was talking about, and I felt very comfortable, very confident because his style, he was strong, aggressive, but he'd get dropped. A lot of guys, they'd drop him, he'd get up and knock him out, but a lot of guys dropped him. He had that chin up in the air, and I felt like if he fought me that way, I'd catch him and I'd drop him and I'd keep him down. But he was great. I loved Alexis. Aaron. I loved Aaron. We got to be good friends, and he's he's the greatest junior welterweight of all time.
One fighter that I want to throw at you here, actually, Ray. I would like to know what you think on this. If you ever did get the chance to fight, this I envision as being a complete mad fight. Yourself against Vinny Pazienza.
Yeah, people say that, and Vinny's a friend of mine. And Vinny goes out and said, I'd have done this, I'd have done that. And I told him, finally, I told him one time, hey, man, because he says it on Facebook a lot. But I like Vinny. But I told him, I said, look, quit putting crap like that out there. People make comments, let them talk. That's fine. That's for the fight fan. But if you're gonna start making comments, I'd have kicked the shit out of you. I told him, I'd have kicked the shit. I'd have walked through you. I'd have walked. You had nothing to keep me off you with. You couldn't punch and lick as a lightweight. When you got to be a junior middleweight, you could punch because Bernardo went from 140. He couldn't punch as a lightweight or junior welterweight at 140. All of a sudden, he goes to 154, 160, and he can punch and he's knocking guys out. Oh, I wonder how that happened. So I finally told him, stop that shit. You want to let people talk about it. If you want to start to you can have a problem. And so we laugh. Now we see each other, we laugh about it. But Vinny, I admire Vinny for what he accomplished. I admire what he did later on with the broken neck. It was probably the greatest comeback in sports history. But as a fighter, as lightweight and junior weight, when we fought at the weights we fought at, I would have beat him. I'd have beat him, and I would have walked through him and walked him down. I wouldn't say I would knock him out. I would just say I would have walked through him, but I would have walked him down. It had been a war for as long as it went, but I would have beat him. I would have beat him. Yes.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that you guys had a bit of back and forth or whatever. But no, that's
but he's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine. But he says, you got to get off that stuff. Quit taking comments like that. Other people, let them say comments. Yeah. Some people think you beat me. Most people think I beat you. Let them not. But don't you make the comments. I don't make no comments. Don't you?
Yeah, fair enough. I remember we did an interview with him, and he was being very vocal on Greg Haugen. He really doesn't like him to this day.
No, they don't. I know they don't. But that's him and that's Haugen. Because Haugen's, they I never had any problems with him. We were friends, and I never made any comments about him. But he started making comments like that on Facebook. Stop it.
Yeah, for sure. And nowadays, Ray, you're working obviously as a boxing analyst. How's that going for you, Ray? You enjoying that?
Going great. I'm loving it. I love it. It's easy talking about something you know about. And I know fights, and I know how to fight, and I like to consider myself a boxing. I'd like to think I know fighters, and I have a high boxing IQ, so I could talk about styles and matchups and things like that. And I like to talk, when I'm doing commentary, I like to talk about what a guy should be doing and before he's doing it. People can see that guy gets hit with a right hand, left hook. I like to talk about what the guy should be doing. He's trying to set him up. I was talking about Robert Helenius from Finland. And he jabbed, and he was Joe Washington 6'6", Helenius was like 6'9", Washington 6'5", Helenius is 6'7". And he kept jabbing and dropping his right hand, and Joe Washington kept trying to throw his right hand. And I said, if you don't pick up that jab, the first round he's missing him, the second round he's going to miss him, but by the end of the fight, he's going to catch him. Well, Robert Helenius was winning the fight, the whole fight. The last round, boom, dropped right hand over the top, caught him on chin, and he went down like a sack of rice. And it happened, just the way I said.
Oh, no,
so, I enjoy doing that. I enjoy talking. People want to hear what you think is going to happen as the fight's going on, but they want to hear stuff from 2 or 3 rounds ahead. They don't want to hear what they can see. They can see a guy get hit with a right hand, left hook. Why is he throwing that right hand, left hook? What's he trying to do? These are things I've tried, something a little different, a little introspective.
Respect to you, Ray, for that. You get a lot of guys, obviously, that like to just call what a lot of people can see, as you mentioned. So it's good to have a bit of different stuff going on there. Aside from being a boxing analyst, I'm struggling with that word tonight for some reason. Have you got any other cool things going on outside the ring, Ray?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have an entertainment company, and we're producing films, and I produce for studios, and now we're in pre-production on a film project that happened in October. I have a wine company and I have a bourbon company. So I have a lifestyle company that, keeps me busy. So, I got a couple of hours in a fire, a couple of different things happening. You got to keep your hands in a lot of different things. I'm a firm believer that you make money from a multitude of sources, not one big source.
Okay, interesting. Where can we purchase some wine from somewhere, Ray?
Well, the wine is right now. It's only in northeastern Ohio. We haven't gone national yet. We're looking to do that and then we're going to come out with another. I'm doing on my next round. We call it round 1. This is round 5. Which is our 5th vintage. We're looking to do round 6 later this year or early next year. But then the bourbons again. We're looking to go national with that very soon. So. The wine right now is again just here. So to get it's hard to ship things domestically, more or less internationally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's much difficult, but Well, I'll see what I can do to send you some. You can text me an address, and I'll see what I could do to get you some.
I appreciate that, Ray.
Yeah, you enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy it.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. And coming down to the last couple questions, Ray, I want to kind of put you on the spot a little bit here. Whenever we speak to somebody from overseas, I like to ask this: who would you say? Who comes to mind when I ask you who's your favourite UK fighter of all time?
Well, my favorite. I have two favorites, but number one, and that thing is, and I've got to know him and be friends. I got to be friends with both guys, but number one is Kenny Buchanan.
Okay.
Kenny Buchanan. Oh, number one. Okay, number top three. I got three. Kenny Buchanan. I got to know him, met him. He's a wonderful guy, just a lovely, lovely man. And I don't think people know how good he was. I really don't think they realize how good he was. And his record showed that. Number two, I think he's the UK's greatest champion. So others will argue about that, and they may argue with the other guy on my list, but I think he's the greatest UK champion. Number two is Barry McGuigan, another man I got to be friends with. Another great fighter. He beat one of the greatest featherweights of all time when he beat Pedrosa. He used to be a Pedrosa. And he did it in America. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He did it over there. I'm sorry, that fight. When he beat Pedrosa, he fought him in Ireland. And he just beat him from top to bottom. And number three, Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think Calzaghe would be the greatest fighter from the UK because he was undefeated and beat the guy. And they very well may be. I love Joe Calzaghe. So, but those are my top three.
Yeah, that's a very solid list. I won't argue with that. Some brilliant names there, especially Calzaghe. I hear that one all the time. And finally, Ray, just before I let you go, I wanted to just kind of give you an opportunity perhaps to send a message to your supporters over here in the UK. Obviously, huge boxing fans over here. Many I'm over here respect you and love you. What's your message to those guys?
I've been coming back for the last several years to the UK at the end of February. At the end of September. September. A friend of mine, Scott Murray, has an event at Bar Sport in Birmingham, where he has Scott Murray's Bar Sport, and they have banquets. And I've been doing it with Kenny, Barry, and others through the last 4 of the last 5 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years. 3 out of the last 4 years. I love it. The people from Birmingham too. So the first day I fly into London, we go have tea. Me and my bride, and Scott takes us to have tea and scones at the Ritz. So we hit the Ritz. And then we drive up, and then we take a tour around Piccadilly Square, and then Piccadilly Plaza. What is it, Piccadilly Square or Piccadilly Plaza?
Circus.
When spelled there, circus. Okay, yeah, that's. We drive around there and see it in different spots, and then we drive up to Birmingham and stay there, and just lovely, lovely people. And then 3 years ago, I went to Cardiff Wells, which was a great city. 2 years ago, I went to Scotland, Glasgow. And then last year I went to Dublin. So, it's just, I just love that trip. It's one of my favorite trips. And the people there treat me wonderful. The people there are absolutely just lovely, lovely people. They love their sports. I love the fact that they are 100% behind the fighters, behind their sports. They're sports fanatics. And it's just a beautiful part of the world. I think everyone should be able to see it.
Very well said, my friend. Like I said, a lot of people over here absolutely love you. They truly do. Listen, Ray, it has been a complete pleasure speaking with you this week and going over your entire career. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a complete honor spending time with a legend like yourself. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Joe. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it very much.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. We're going to start here with the fact that Eddie Hearn has now announced, we heard a few whispers last week, but it's now official. It was announced this week, earlier on, I think it was Monday, it was announced. Andy Ruiz Jr. against Anthony Joshua, the rematch. It's going to be happening in Saudi Arabia. Weird, really, to see a heavyweight world title fight happen over there, but of course... We've seen a couple fights there now involving British fighters. I think the ones to kind of break through was Callum Smith against George Groves. Then we saw most recently Amir Khan and Billy Dibb. And now the biggest fight, possibly one of the biggest fights really in boxing right now is heading to Saudi. So interesting, really, Eddie. I mean, it's took us all by surprise. You'd have to say it's obviously for monetary gain. It's not really, it's not a fight really for the fans, because it's going to be a very hard place to get to. But let's just talk about, let's, rather than the actual logistics of it, let's talk about the fight itself. I mean, we haven't, I don't think, spoke about it on the podcast, but how do you see the second fight going? A lot of people I speak to, they think that Ruiz will win this one as well.
Well, in this one, honestly, you can look at it, and I can see why people would think, that Ruiz is going to have a similar kind of situation go on, minus the knockdown in this fight. However, I do think that maybe his style may be a bit of a problem for Anthony Joshua, and I can see how that can work. But to be honest, looking at Anthony Joshua even before the fight, even before the announcement of the names, you know what I mean, he didn't look to be 100% himself, not 100% confident. He looked a little too relaxed, a little too, like, his mind just wasn't there at that moment. I'm not taking anything from Andy Ruiz. However, what he brought to the table that night for that version of Anthony Joshua was too much. Now, if they fight again, I want to see what happens with, the style, how the styles mesh when we get 100% of what Anthony Joshua has to offer. You know what I mean? Him, no excuses, being able to go in there and just fire off shots. Now, when he dropped Andy Ruiz the first time in the fight, it looked like, oh, okay, business as usual. Anthony Joshua going to go in and take care of business like he's supposed to. But then you see a guy get up off the mat, off the canvas, come back, and then not only get back into the fight right away and shake off whatever cobwebs there were, but to throw multiple punches in return. So it just makes it like, wow, you know what I mean? You look at a guy like that and you start to think, well, did that immediately put some doubt into Anthony Joshua's mind? When you drop somebody like that and you seem to have the fight under control, and they get back up and then put you down, it sometimes can have a little more doubt creep up in your mind. Maybe the shot that he landed initially on Anthony Joshua really weakened his legs and took everything away from him. But just overall, him coming back with multiple punches seemed to be like, something maybe at that moment Anthony Joshua wasn't really prepared to handle.
Yep, and also Billy Joe Saunders has now put pen to paper with Matchroom Boxing. It was the obvious move, really, once he'd amicably parted ways with his former promoter Frank Warren, a guy that took him really from his debut, if I'm not mistaken, all the way up to the WBO world title. Actually, he's now a 2-weight world champion, isn't he? He's got the super middleweight at the moment. They parted ways, unless he decided to completely, up and go and move to the States or something like that. Then the obvious choice was to go with Eddie Hearn. Not only that, but it also opens the door for the big fights, on the zone with Canelo, with Triple G, with Callum Smith. There's many fights that can be made there. So no real surprise, but that's an exciting one. There's many big fights that can be made, and that's what we need really for Billy Joe Saunders, because he's a guy that at some points in his career he has fought to the level of his opposition. It kind of springs to mind things like Willie Monroe Jr. Obviously that defense he had in Scotland against Akavov. He can really fight down. If he's not motivated, then we don't really see the best of him, sadly. So it'd be nice to see him in these big fights. He's got a chance with anyone, because he's seriously talented, Billy Joe. The other piece of news is that Tyson Fury, it's now been finally announced. It's happening September 14th against the undefeated Otto Wallin. That one to happen at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It's unclear of if it's going to be on pay-per-view in the UK or not, but anyway, the big man's fighting the number one between us, certainly, Eddie. I know that we say he's the number one heavyweight in the world. We agree on that, but it's another fight, Eddie, really, that, some people are annoyed because they've got to wait longer to see him in there with Deontay Wilder again, but everyone has to kind of admit that, he's the only guy to have took on Vladimir, to have took on Deontay Wilder, so he's been in big fights time and time again. I know that this guy is a little bit of another kind of Tom Schwartz. So again, people do, boxing, as you know yourself, boxing fans are probably the most impatient fans in all sports. But it's another fight to watch. It's another undefeated guy. He's going to come and give it a good go. It's his world title fight. It's his chance to really upset the division and shake it up. So it should be interesting. I'm looking forward to it, as I do, no matter who he fights, to be honest. I'm that much of a fan of Fury.
Yeah, of course I am too. Spending time with him and getting to know him, he's I'm a fan of his personality in general and just him as a person. But on top of all that, his boxing ability for a 6'9", 250-pound guy is second to none. So, to get an opportunity to watch him box is something that you should definitely do. You know what I mean? And even with a guy like Tom Whalen, wasn't it? Otto Whalen. I don't know why I said Tom. Otto Whalen.
Tom Schwartz is
That's why. But even if it's against him, you know what I mean? You can even learn something watching him. There's a lot that goes on. There's a lot that he puts on as far as a show when it comes to boxing. Not only just the boxing and what goes on in the ring, but his antics outside the ring even make it a little more interesting. But like you said, like we talked about, he fought Vladimir Klitschko, at a time when he was still dominating and took him apart. You know what I mean? And he did the same thing with Deontay Wilder when nobody thought that could be possible. With Wilder's right hand, and took him apart. And honestly, should have won the fight. But things happen, and this is boxing. But without a doubt, the number one heavyweight in the world today, that would be very, very difficult to dethrone. And I think the only way that happens is he obviously gets old or he gets caught. And I would love to see him in there with Wilder, but we got to take what we can get while we can get it.
Yeah, for sure. And the final piece of news it's a fight on the undercard of the Spence Porter fight at the Staples Center in LA on September 28th. It's shaping up to be a brilliant bill, by the way. Obviously, as I said, it's topped by Spence and Porter. On the undercard, Anthony Dirrell against David Benavidez. Of course, we had Benavidez on the show last week. And a fight that I'm talking about here that's just been announced, Mario Barrios, 24-0, friend of the show. He takes on very good amateur, now undefeated pro, Batir Akhmedov. He's only 7-0, but believe me, he can seriously fight. That one is actually, it's now for the vacant WBA World Super Lightweight title. So a chance there for Barrios to become a world champion. Like I say, he under Virgil Hunter has just been looking amazing recently, and he's such a humble guy. I got a lot of time really for Barrios. But also on that undercard, we get to see Josecito Lopez, 36-8, take on John Molina Jr. Of course, we didn't get to see John Molina Jr. take on Sergei Lipinets, even though we had John Molina on the show talking about it. Obviously, the fight fell through. That would have been a war, but believe me, this one's going to be a war as well. Of course, Lopez looked good against, it was Keith Thurman he fought, wasn't it? Yeah, so brilliant fight. Robert the Ghost Guerrero also on that card as well, so a few big names there. But that's really it, though, for the news part. Just moving now over to the preview part of the show. Is starting this Friday, the 16th of August, we get to see at the Memorial Hall in Kansas, USA, Shane Mosley Jr., 14-3. He's in a 10-rounder against Calvin Metcalf, who's now 9-2 with one draw. Moving out now to the Friedrich Hall in Ludwigshafen in Rheinland-Pfalz, Germany. That's probably not how I said, Eddie. Don't get too impressed there.
Sound good.
Vincent Feigenbutz, 30-2. He's in a 12-rounder against Cesar Nunez, 16-0 with one draw. That one's for the GBU World title and the IBO International Super Middleweight title. So we've got to mention Feigenbutz here and there. Finally, the final bill to mention, like I say, not too much to preview this weekend. This one is at the Bank of California Stadium in LA, California, USA. On the undercard, we get to see Arnold Barboza Jr., 21-0. He takes on Ricky Sismundo, who's 35-14 with 3 draws. Jesse Magdaleno, 26-1, takes on Rafael Rivera, 27-3 with 2 draws. Chris Van Heerden, 27-2 with 1 draw. I feel very sorry for Van Heerden. Obviously, he's had some serious outside of the ring troubles. I believe his father got murdered a few months ago out there in South Africa, a very dangerous place to be at the moment. He takes on Aslanbek Kozayev, who I haven't heard of actually, but he's 33-2 with 1 draw. These are all 10-rounders, but the main event over 12 rounds for the WBO World Super Bantamweight title, Emmanuel Navarrete, the guy that beat Isaac Dogboe back-to-back. He looked amazing. He was way too big for Dogboe. Like I say, 27-1. He takes on Francisco de Vaca, 20-0. I don't know tons about de Vaca really, so I'm going to just have a little look. I should have probably had this up beforehand, but de Vaca, like I say, boasts that record of 20-0, only 6 KOs. Wouldn't imagine he's going to, have any kind of power to bother Navarrete. Navarrete, the bigger puncher of the two. But you look for his record, he doesn't really have any standout names, to be honest. So that's kind of... That's a bit upsetting, really. I mean, a lot of people are kind of saying this fight really is just an easy touch, really, after 2 back-to-back fights with Dogbay. That he won easy, but Dogbay is still a tough fighter, still a very, very strong guy. So it's a bit of an easy touch, but he probably deserves it, Navarrete. But that's all the action really this weekend. I just want to ask you this, Eddie. This is a question that you're going to probably have to think about here. Friend of the show, at Ricey_SUFC, he's been listening to the show for a long time now. He says, he asked you a question here: if you could fight any heavyweight in their prime, which is a bit strange, but any heavyweight in their prime, I'm guessing probably in your prime as well. I'm going to change it a little bit. If you could fight any heavyweight while you were in your prime and they were in their prime, who would it be and why? I know I'm putting you on the spot big time there, but
it's tough. When you think about me, when I always wanted to be, the best. I would consider the best, at least in my era, and if I could be considered the best ever, that would be awesome. But I just wanted to always take on the toughest challenges, and I wanted to take those on first. So when you think of the best ever and the GOAT, and most people obviously think of Ali, and I've always been a real follower of Ali. Obviously, I've been a real supporter, and you just love what he's brought to the table inside and outside the ring. And if you want to be an iconic fighter and somebody who was thought of as or be remembered, you would have to take on somebody that has that kind of power. And I feel like when you think about Joe Frazier and other guys that have faced Ali, all of those guys.
We went to his gym today, Joe Frazier.
We did. Think about all the guys who faced Ali. Not even just Joe. Look at all the other guys who faced Ali, even the ones who wouldn't even have been talked about later in their careers or later in life, even when they passed on. But because they fought Ali, their names are not, like you think Chuck Wepner, things like that. You know what I mean? Like Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier obviously would have been talked about because he's a great fighter. But there's other guys, Cleveland Williams. There's a lot of dudes you would talk about. You probably wouldn't even have said their names out loud if they didn't have to do with Ali. So me thinking of myself and where I would love for myself to be remembered in history was to be able to share the ring with somebody that great. And what he was able to do outside of the ring and become, and transcend the sport of boxing, and in athletics as well, and become how do I put it? Somebody that's in the movement, of improving, black relations and stuff like that. I mean, you just look at him and you say, damn, this was a real all-around top guy in every aspect of the way. And I'm thinking, well, if I had an opportunity to share the ring with somebody, even being an adversary to him, I would have loved it to have been somebody like Ali, because for sure, winning, losing, whatever, drawing, you're going to be remembered. And, and at that point, obviously, I would love to win. So you can think of me as the GOAT too. But to just be able to share the ring and even being part of the pressure with him and being able to listen to what he says and how he talks bad about you. But even good if that happens, you know what I mean? It would be awesome to be able to to have been able to do that. But obviously, I'll never get the opportunity for that. But that would be who it would have been.
See, that's interesting, Eddie, because, he's a guy that, he was so fast he could switch his light off and get in bed before the room was dark, but you're known for your speed.
Yes.
Who would have had the quicker hands, be honest?
I mean, Cassius Clay might have had, maybe.
I don't think he did. Do you know what? I think your hands are quicker, Eddie.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little quicker. Maybe a little bit quicker. Maybe I couldn't have been in bed before I was dark, but I damn sure would have been able to click the light twice or something like that, you know what I'm saying, before it was dark. But, it's when you think of guys like him, you know what I mean? I think he was the GOAT, or the greatest of all time, for more than just how he performed in the ring. Like I said, he transcends sports, not just boxing, sports. Anybody who you ask, and who do you remember most? I remember my manager, at the time, his name was Rob Murray. He was a great guy. God rest his soul, he passed away. He said he was riding with him because they were good friends. He rode with him in a limo, and they were riding through, I think, New York. And he was like, you want to see how famous... You want to see fame? You want to see real fame? You want to see something? Got out the car. He got out of the limo in the middle of the street or something like that. Got out the limo, walks around with his hands spread out like Jesus on the cross or something, right? And people run him down. Oh, it's Ali! Oh my God, it's Ali! Running up to him, and then you think, if you could have that kind of effect on somebody, get out of the limo, just out of nowhere, and people look and say, "Oh crap, it's Ali!" Like you think of Tyson when he was talking about Wilder being able to walk down the street, nobody knowing, and they know him before. It's like Tyson maybe in the UK, but seriously, it's like to go anywhere in the world and be recognized. Think about Ali going to Zaire or going to Manila,
Yeah.
Those places, and they're like, that's the world champion for real. Like he was not just champion of the world in boxing; he was champion of the world to everybody and everything. So. That's definitely why I would want to spend my time at least fighting. If I'm going to fight with anybody, it would be him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a fantastic fighter. I've said it on this podcast. Anytime I get a chance to praise Ali, I do. But yeah, that's about everything from us this week. So like I say, Eddie, thank you for filling in once again for Ayaz. Again, we don't know where he is. Yeah. We spoke to him the other day, FaceTime me. He spoke to Eddie. Then when Eddie passed the phone back to me, the phone went down. I don't know where he is. We don't know where he is. We're still trying to find him. He's somewhere, not quite sure where he is. He's still not back in the UK. I've come out here to the States. He's not in the States. I don't know where he is, but Eddie, like I say, thanks once again for filling in. It's been cool. It's been episode 200. We've done it live in this makeshift studio, and it's just been amazing. So thank you once again, Eddie, for filling in. It's always brilliant spending time talking boxing with you, whether it's on the show or not, to be honest.
No problem, man. Like I said, man, anytime you need me, whether it's you're here or you're back in the UK, or if you need me to come to the UK, maybe that'll happen someday. Who knows? But no, I'm always up for it. It's a fun time, and of course, I love to talk. So let's just leave it at that.
Okay. Right, like I say, just before we wrap up part 2, the final thing to do is to welcome our second and final guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome undeniably one of the very top fighters in the 140-pound division. It is, of course, Mr. Mykal Fox. Mike, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me again.
It's always a pleasure, Mike. We last spoke, like I say, back in May. It was just after your win over Gabe Nazarov. Once again, though, we spoke to your brother. We spoke to your brother a few weeks after, and he again reminded our listeners that as an amateur, you obviously had the record of 40 wins, 60 losses, and to beat Gabe Nazarov, an Olympic gold medalist, and take his O. It's almost unbelievable. Things like that just don't happen. Do you feel like you're finally getting the credit that you deserve, Mike, or not yet, perhaps?
I think with that fight, definitely got me some credit. It really got my story out there. I tell people I don't whisper it. I was 40 into the amateur. I didn't take boxing seriously as I do now. A win like that proves that having it proves that having an Olympic pedigree it gets you a good start in your career, but crossing over to the pros, it's a different monster.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you've now signed to fight Eudy Bernardo on September 14th in Pennsylvania. What do you know about Bernardo, Michael?
I know he's, I think he was like 24-4, with like 18 knockouts. I can't find a lot of footage on him. Only thing that keeps popping up is this fight with Mason Menard, and that's not a good fight to try to gauge how good he is off of.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I hadn't seen much of him. I went on his box rec, and he's throwing a punch from a southpaw stance, but he's not actually a southpaw, which is an odd one. Obviously he is a guy with more experience than the likes of Gabe Nazarov and Ergashev in the pro ranks, at least. But how do you compare this guy to those guys in terms of what they bring to the table? Would you say that this guy is maybe a step down technically?
From a little bit of footage I've seen, yeah, I think he might be. I think he probably is a step down from them, but he's still not to be taken lightly. Coming off of three undefeated fighters back to back, I think I don't believe in taking light touches. I don't believe this is a light touch, but this is I don't think this is going to be I don't think this guy is on that level.
Yeah, no, it's fair to say, but no, you've expressed before that you're not interested in easy fights and stuff like that, and no, this isn't that at all. I'm not saying that, but a fight that did happen the other week, which I'm sure that you were watching with interest, Hooker Ramirez. I mean, obviously Ramirez got the W, but it was in impressive fashion, if we're being honest. What did you make of the fight, though?
Man, I think that was one of the best fights of the year. Actually, I know it only went 6-7 rounds. But it action from the start. It reminded me. I told my brother. It reminded me of Hearns and Hagler. You know, Hearns and Hagler didn't go long at all, but as soon as that first bell rang, they were on each other. And you know, the crazy thing about it is, I think Hooker was landing his best punch, and then Ramirez was landing his best punch. That's what made the fight so good. It was just a matter of who was going to land their best punch better. And it turned out to be Ramirez. Throwing the double hook body, the body head, digging with his left hand, and he finally just snuck that shot in, and then he went in for the kill.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a great fight up until then.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I know that you take one fight at a time, as a proper pro should. But on the world scene at 140 right now, there's obviously now only 3 men. Hooker lost the title. Ramirez has now got 2 of the 4, and then Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis have got the other 2 belts. Which of those guys do you most want to fight in the not so distant future? I'm guessing.
In the not so distant future, I mean. Realistically, getting the best chance I have of fighting any of them to get a mandatory spot. I don't think I could just jump in right into the fray and just steal the spotlight. I would have to do it as a mandatory. But I think Ramirez holds two of the 4 major belts. I think. He's a great fighter. A lot of aggression, will come forward action. But I think he leaves himself open sometimes. As I grow and improve, those would be things I could take better advantage of.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think also with Ramirez, sometimes it depends kind of. I know he's still undefeated, but it kind of depends which version of himself turns up. Obviously, he didn't look amazing in his fight before this, but then when he took on guys like Mike Reed, he looked unbelievable. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it was like when he fought with the Peta, clash of style. A clash of style. Yeah, a clash of style. So everybody brings something different to the game. I mean, if you look. You look through our history. Some guy, Pernell Whitaker, struggled with a guy. I forgot his name. He was like a mandatory before it was a title eliminator before he fought Oscar De La Hoya. And up until Pernell stopped him, he was losing that fight. So, I think just every now and then somebody just surprises you with something you're not really expecting. But I don't think that Ramirez. I don't think it's ever a time he doesn't show up. I think he just. The guy surprised him with what he brought to the table.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to ask you also, Mike, we always have to ask you this, and I ask your brother the same question. What's happening with your other brother, obviously, Alontes? When's he next fighting? Any news just yet?
No news yet. It's actually people aren't jumping at the chance to fight him. He's currently number 3. He's ranked number 3 by the WBO. He was supposed to fight in July. Liam Williams went a different direction. So now Alontes Fox is in the gym. He's training. He's ready. He's chomping at the bit. So you just got to get somebody to say yes to him.
Yeah, for sure. I know he's always chomping at the bit, Alontes. After your fight, Mike, are you looking to have another one before the year's out, or can you not really say because you're not too sure how the fight's gonna go?
Well, we'd have to see how the fight goes. I wouldn't mind trying to get another one if there's time. I mean, yeah, there's some time. There will be time left in the year. We just gotta see how this fight goes. Biggest thing I'm worried. Biggest thing that I only really worry about keeping me from fighting is an injury or anything. I don't. But if this fight could go 10 rounds. I think I'd still be good to go as long as there's no injuries and nothing that could that's gonna have any long-term effects. I'm always down.
Yeah, for sure. And just finally, Mike, as always, I just want to give you the microphone, so to speak, and let you have your say. If there's anything that you want to say at all to our listeners before I let you go, now's the time.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who listens to the podcast. Thank you to Joey for always giving me a call. But the thing is, this year it's winding down, and I'm definitely looking to make a big splash in 2020. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for sure, Mike. Listen, it is always a pleasure speaking with you, my brother. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck for September 14th, and we'll catch up sometime after for sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 200 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. I'd also like to thank our two guests on this week's podcast, the former WBA Lightweight World Champion, Mr. Ray Mancini, and the top super lightweight contender, Mr. Mykal Fox. There has been one or two pieces of news break whilst we've been recording the show. Liam Smith and John O'Carroll have now been added to the Matra Mexico card on August 24th. So yeah, both guys I believe have actually got opponents for that one there. Robbie Davies Jr. and Lewis Ritson have had their grudge match announced. Actually, very surprising how quick it's been done. It's, you know, they were only fighting the other week, and now they've got a date and all that. The date, by the way, is October 19th. Credit to both men for getting it on. A great fight that should be. And also on October 11th we'll get to see Paddy Barnes fight the undefeated Welsh prospect Mr. Jay Harris. Jay has you know, accumulated a good undefeated record, but he hasn't really boxed the names. I know he took on Angel Moreno, the guy that boxed Charlie Edwards in Charlie Edwards' first world title defense. That was a decent name for him, but that was really the only kind of name that he's boxed. So I do want to see him step it up. I know that there was talks of him fighting Andrew Selby. I think it was even going to purse bids. Not quite sure what happened there. But yeah, he takes on Paddy Barnes, so that should be quite a good fight there. I'm looking forward to that one. That, by the way, will be taking place at the Ulster Hall in Belfast. But that is about everything from myself. It has been fun. It has been from New Jersey. I hope that you've all enjoyed this week's show. It's been a bit different. Remember to tell a friend, and we shall see you all again next week.